which is the first open source integrated library system, ILS. It has been around since 1999. It is a full-featured open source. This means that it has most of the functional components that we would expect to have to manage day-to-day workflows in a library of any type. School libraries, hospital libraries, medical, public libraries, consortial groupings of libraries using union catalogs, academic libraries, special libraries. The application seems to work very well for all different types of libraries. One of the most important things to keep in mind with this particular application is that it is open source, or perhaps open development. This means that it is not owned by any company. This means that the software has no license costs attached to it. It is free to be used, and it is also free to be enhanced or improved by individuals or organizations or libraries with the technical skills to make new software enhancements in the source code. So you'll hear open source a lot. Over the years of working in this, I've come to really acknowledge this more as open development, because the application has the potential to be changing quite constantly. So even though there is no software costs attached, it's not free. There is a commitment on the libraries that use it to know that it is changing often. That's why I think of it as an open development environment. The entire application is completely web-based. This means that everything we do, all transactions that library staff members do, circulation, cataloging, acquisitions, control of serials and periodicals, report, everything is done through a web browser. The system administrator, system librarian, who sets things up, configures the system, creates the circulation policy, that is all done through a web browser. And of course, our research community, our end users, everything they do is through a web browser. This is important because it means that no software needs to be installed on the desktops in the libraries. Everything can be done through a web browser. The application is written in a programming language called Perl. It currently uses the MySQL relational database. By using this relational database, that means that SQL commands can be used to query the database and retrieve all kinds of rich reporting information. It uses either an Apache web or Nginx web server. This is how it connects to the internet and talks, if you will, with the browsers. And we are currently using Debian as the operating system. It can also run on Linux, but it's important to know that it is not using a Windows operating system. It is a Debian Linux. Now, the thing to keep in mind with the open source or open development environment is that the application is enhanced by the customers who use it. Because this is not proprietarily owned, there is no company behind it who will make improvements in order to sell more licenses and thus justify their investment. That is not this scenario. So the application only grows when the customers who use it either come to companies like mine and require development and they pay for that development, or they can do it on their own if they have the Perl programming skills. Okay. Another important thing to know is that in an open source or open development environment, because the software is not proprietary or commercially owned, that means that it is free to evolve or grow as the users that use it need it to grow or evolve. So you will see that there are different versions of the KOHA platform around the world because the communities in certain areas have invested in it to meet their workflow needs. This is the other important change in this open source or open development environment. This means that we as librarians have the opportunity to make the tool fit our workflow needs rather than purchasing a commercial product where we have to adapt our workflows to the way that the software is designed to work. A couple of ways that the software platform can be enhanced, almost all of them through programming, but you need to know that sometimes it changes simply with changes to the display end versus architectural changes below at the code level. An example of an architectural or structural change could be removing the existing search engine and replacing it with a more efficient search engine. That would be a very substantial development piece, and it would enhance the product greatly. In other instances, there are enhancements that are done at a functional level. One example might be several years ago, some academic libraries in the United States realized that they needed to have what we call course reserves. That's the ability for faculty members in an academic setting to bring materials into the library to be used to support the course they're teaching. So the materials are not owned by the library, and they don't necessarily fall under normal library circulation policies. So the development was added into the application to allow for course reserves. One of the things that course reserves relies on in many libraries is hourly loans rather than a daily loan, or multiple is turning into weeks. So to enhance the application to support something like course reserves, many changes needed to be made. The circulation system had to be altered at the fundamental layer to support the ability to circulate within a 60-minute period rather than a 24-hour period. Then screens had to be added to allow the names of the teachers and their courses to be put on. So that's an example of a functional enhancement versus an architectural structural change like a search engine removal. So there are many, many different ways that libraries can enhance this application through change. Since the application, the software itself, has no license costs, there is no charge for that. However, there are charges that go with it. So any complex, complicated software application, like an integrated library system, is not very easy to install by yourself. It's not like purchasing the Microsoft Office suite on a CD-ROM and inserting it in and just clicking yes, yes, yes. It's very involved to install. Once it is installed, it is very generic or bland in the very beginning. Each library goes in and adapts their own policies of circulation, categories of users, their own material or item types. So you need assistance in configuring very generic software in the beginning to make it fit your policies. Of course, if you are on an existing system and moving to this one, you'll need assistance in migrating your data into this system. We all need and treasure training, so training is available. Because the software is not provided by a commercial company, we need to keep in mind that we will want to be able to have some kind of help desk or support. So that is another service that would be provided. And then development or enhancement of the application. So there are many companies like mine throughout the world that are providing some or all of these different services to libraries that use this free, no-cost, open source, open development software. So sometimes we ask ourselves, if I'm going to bring in an automated tool like this, what kind of experience does my staff in the library need? Okay, so I would suggest to you that if your library has already used any commercial automated library system, this is no different. The same type of skill to use these applications is equal, whether they're commercial and you purchase them, or whether they are open source, open development, you use them with no cost. Okay. If you do want to install this in your own library, you will need to have experienced employees that know how to run a Linux or Debian operating system. Okay. You'll need to know people that are familiar with doing upgrades, okay? An upgrade to a relational database, perhaps. In the environment that my company works in, we host the application and the database for our hundreds and hundreds of customers. So we are not installing things on hardware servers in the libraries. We're installing them in a cloud that our company uses. So we completely host everything for our customers. So they have no software installed on their machines because they access everything through a browser. And then the back-end database is hosted in our cloud facility, so they don't need to maintain hardware on site. However, if that is not a situation that your library may choose, you will need to have that type of network or system information technology system support available for you locally. I would suggest, though, that if you are considering this type of an application, the hosted solution is much, much easier. That way, we as librarians can focus on providing library services, not running hardware systems. Now, there is no cost for the software, but that doesn't mean it's a free lunch. There are costs involved, okay? I've mentioned some of the services earlier, but you also need to know that if you are going to move from one library system to another, like the KOHA platform, or if you are going to begin using an automated system like the KOHA platform for the first time ever, there will be staff time involved, okay? So you need to realize that implementing the system, bringing it up and going live on the system does take staff time. You'll need staff members to review the data migration process to make sure all of your data has been moved properly and that all of your data is there and there has been no corruption. You will need staff members probably in circulation and cataloging to help configure the software, to set up the right circulation policies, to make sure that you're importing bibliographic records properly, to make sure that you have any cataloging templates that you want to use set up and ready to go. So it's important to know that there are hidden costs, if you will, meaning that there is staff time involved in implementation. Now, implementation for us is usually a 3 to 4 month process. So it's in this 3 to 4 month process that you need to know that members of your team, your library staff, may be expected to be involved and help out as the implementation goes. Once the implementation process is done, now you're live, you're using the application every day, those staff time and resources needed in implementation are gone at that point. It was just temporary, but you need to factor that in when you're looking at what kind of resources you will expend to do this. Now, I just want to talk a little bit high level about a cost-benefit analysis. Because again, there is no charge for the software, but that does not mean that everything is free. So if you were to purchase a commercial library automation system for one of the commercial vendors, you will be paying them software license charges. In the KOHA environment, you don't. So there's a savings right there. However, whether it is the open source, open development, no cost software, or whether it is the commercial software, you still need to purchase the services involved to have something installed for you, to have something configured with your staff, to have your data migrated, to have your staff trained. So those service costs go with all of the library automation products, whether they are free, open source, open development, or commercial. Those types of costs are usually based on human labor categories. So the costs tend to be generally similar for the services, whether the software is free or not. Okay. Now, once you're live in an open source, open development environment, you need a help desk. You need support. You need to be able to email or call some entity to assist you if you're having problems with the application. In the commercial world, you are sold a maintenance license. That is part of the original purchase, okay? And there's a cost attached to that. And there's usually a cost of living adjustment that occurs every year that increases that cost. You're going to want that same type of support if you go to the open source, open development environment. So there are costs involved for that. In my organization, our annual maintenance costs include the hosting piece. We don't separate that out. In our opinion, in our view, the hosting should be part of the support. So it's one cost all over. So if you compare the costs between a commercial system and an open source system, the largest and main difference is zero software cost in open source. Services will tend to be about the same, and of course the maintenance you may see the maintenance a little lower in the open source or open environment, okay, or it may be equal to what some of the commercial vendors are providing, because that service is essentially the same. So this slide here, I understand that everybody will receive a copy of the slides. I just put some numbers in here just so that everybody, when they review later, can kind of get a sense of where the comparisons between a commercial and an open source are. These numbers are here simply as examples. Okay? They do not represent any true pricing. That is something that you would negotiate and work with for each particular vendor or support role that you would look at. The next couple of slides I have are really just to give you a screenshot view of what one of the versions of the KOHA platform looks like. So this screen here is what a library staff member sees when they log in the morning. And in this particular view, this staff member is what we call Super Librarian, which is just, to me, a great title, Super Librarian, okay? The Super Librarian in the KOHA platform has complete system permissions and privileges. This means that they can access everything. You can give individual staff members the privileges and permissions that relate to their tasks. So for instance, if I have some library staff members who only do circulation, they don't do anything else, when they log in, they would only see the options in the left-hand column: circulation, patrons, search, and lists. They would not see anything in the right hand because they don't do cataloging or acquisitions or reporting. So that's one of the nice pieces of the software, is that there are probably about 50 or 60 different permissions relating to the different areas of the software product that can be assigned to different staff members. There's a lot of flexibility in this software application. This is a view of the front end, the OPAC, the discovery tool. This is a view from your end user, your patron, your researcher, who has done a search in the system, and they are retrieving materials back. So running down the left-hand side of the screen are what we call the facets. And the facets are data points retrieved from the results of the search. So facets tend to be subjects, authors, which are coming from the authority-controlled fields on the bibliographic records. Other facets tend to be information about the item. For instance, the location in the library, like location code, like reference or children's or second floor periodicals. You can also use item types as a facet. So you might say books, CDs, Blu-rays. You can use library codes. If your library has multiple branches, that would be another facet. And the idea behind the facets is your researcher does an initial search and retrieves perhaps dozens, if not hundreds, of results. The facets let them very quickly refine or narrow down that search to just very important pieces that they need, so they don't have to look at 200 or 300 records. This next display is the cataloging component. Okay, so now I'm back on the staff side. I'm a staff member who has cataloging privileges, and I've brought up a bibliographic record in a very brief format. And if you look down the left-hand side, you'll notice several gray bars, each one of which, when clicked on, will give me a different view of this record. So I'm showing the normal view. So you can see I've got the title. The authors, by the way, are in blue with links. Those are hypertext links. So if you click on any author, it will immediately go to all other titles by that author because it uses the authority record. At the very bottom of the screen, you'll see the item information. This is a book, the location. Then we see it's in the collection. There's our call number. The status is currently available. It was last seen. The last seen is the last time that it was passed through a circulation barcode reader. And finally, there's the barcode number. You'll notice the barcode number is in blue with a line under. That is a hypertext link as well. Clicking on that would take you to that particular item record. If I were to go and want to edit this record, it presents itself to me in a single screen mark cataloging editor. And running down the left are the mark fields, to the right are the subfields with all the data that are in them. So it's a very nice, rich cataloging editor. If I were to be a library staff member that had access to acquisitions, this is the main entry page into the acquisitions. And running down the left-hand side is my toolbar for acquisitions. And to the right and middle is the display screen. And at this point, I'm sitting on the purchase order screen, and I have a single purchase order highlighted there in the orangish color. Here is a screen from circulation. Again, I would be a staff member provided with circulation privileges. So I could come here. At the top of the screen, upper left, is where I can enter a patron number, okay, or search the catalog or check items out. And down the bottom of the screen is where I have two rows with different tools that I may use in circulation. For instance, off to the right under reports, I can process call slips. Call slips are for collections that are not openly available to your users. Your user can search and acknowledge that you have this, but then they need to make a request for you to go, or your staff to go and retrieve that item, possibly from the archives or a special collections that is just not open to the public. Below that are the holds queue. So there's a lot of rich availability to place holds on materials that are either already checked out and you'd like to receive that item when it's returned. The application also allows libraries to allow what is called on-shelf holds, if you so choose. And in this case, your users can place a hold on an item maybe a day or two before they're coming into the library. And the library staff would then run this holds report, and it would give them a list of all the materials to retrieve from the shelf to bring down and place on the hold shelf for that user when they come in. That is where I was going to go. Tambani, I'm a little under the 30 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions.